Maranatha, for the sound of the bell. Mind calm, body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Om Amoga Vairochana Mahamudra Mani Padme Jvala Pravartaya Hum.
Please stand and join me in chanting of the three refuges. So we will take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, first in Sino-Korean, out of respect to our lineage, and then in English. So please feel your feet connecting with the earth beneath you. Bring the right and left sides of your body together, palms together. In this gesture we call Hapchang, a sincere heart. Then breathe. Just throw your voice in as best you can. Now repeat after me in English. I go for refuge to the Buddha
I go for refuge to the Buddha
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment
and realize the great way.
and realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma
I go for refuge to the Dharma
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings
I will penetrate the teachings
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha
I go for refuge to the Sangha
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
and transform this world into Buddha land unimpeded.
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
Now please return to your places for another brief period of meditation. So as we engage in our meditation practice, take time to care for your body, straightening your back, Feeling your sitting bones and knees, sitting in a balanced way, connected to the earth beneath you. Looking down the bridge of your nose, wherever your gaze naturally falls. Placing the hands in a mudra, left fingers on top of right, with the thumbs intimately touching. And then being at one with your breath. Counting the breath if that is your practice. Engaging in deep questioning, wadu, if that's your practice. And just be at one with your practice for the next 5 minutes until you hear the sound of the bell. Please join me in some stretching as an end to our meditation practice. Working with the pressure points along the ridge of the skull. All the way to the occipital bone. And massaging the ears. And now harmonizing with your breath, lean forward on your fists and stretch your lower back. Eyes looking upwards. Stretching upwards. Stretching upwards. And then to the left. Switching to the right. And as we sit up, we clasp our hands behind our back. And lean forward. And this time as we sit up, we leave our hands clasped and do a spinal twist to the left. Looking all the way over your left shoulder. Coming back to center. Twisting to the right. Placing your hands at the base of your trunk. We do some big body circles. Reverse direction. Placing your right hand over your left rib cage. Lean toward the right. And then stretch the spine in the opposite direction. Clasping the hands behind the head. Sharp outward breaths. Twisting to the left. To the right. Reaching all the way up. And now some abdominal breathing as we drop our arms. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me? Wonderful. Take a little sip of water. Good to see everyone here today, and thanks for coming on this Labor Day weekend that we sort of view as the closing of summer and the beginning of the fall semester, although classes are already in session and a football game has already occurred, which living in this neighborhood we're pretty aware of due to the parking and the crowds and things like that. So harmonizing with this theme of Labor Day, I'm going to first, let's connect back to what we talked about last weekend. And we spoke about the roots of this temple and how in the early days, temples were built through together action and physical labor, and starting with very little, starting with ruined buildings and creating them into temples. And we see that spirit continuing in our Sangha today through all the work practices that we do together. This embodied work is a way of getting to know each other deeply and of working on something greater than ourselves. So for example, tomorrow or yesterday, not tomorrow, yesterday, those who came for a work practice did all sorts of things, working in the garden, scraping the porch steps so that we can repaint them, putting up our beautiful sign out front, cleaning refrigerators, putting away tablecloths from Peace Camp. So a lot happened in just a couple hours with a few people. And it did feel like we left the place better than we found it. So continuing now with this theme, Labor Day. So if we look at the history of Labor Day, it became a national holiday in 1894. And it was intended to celebrate workers' contributions to the country's strength, prosperity, and well-being. So at the time of its origin, there was a lot of labor unrest in this country. Children working, employees being asked to work 7-day weeks, 12 hours a day, unfair wages, all these kinds of things. So it's the birth of labor unions. And so Labor Day was born out of that movement. So it has this deep connection to labor, this image of labor. And for many, as we know, what it's become today is also, it marks the end of summer. It's a holiday. We get together with our friends and families and have that one last barbecue and all of these things. But what then does labor or work mean in a Buddhist sense? Because it seems like it occupies most of our life, whether we have a paying job, whether we work at home, or any of this stuff. So I wanted to start with a few reflections from Simone Wilde. Let me look for the dates of her birth if I can find it within that. So I'm not finding the dates of her life, but I know that she was alive in 1936 during the time of World War I, and that she was born, I believe she lived in Germany at one time, and she fled during the war. maybe that's not correct. But anyway, no, she lived in France, and she led during the German occupation of France. But she was quite an exceptional person. Came from a family that was well educated. I think her father was a physician. And she herself was an outstanding sort of student. She graduated first in her class. She and her brother both were kind of known as prodigies. And during her lifetime, she was known for the activism that she did. She embodied work in many ways because she was a teacher, yes, but then she also became a farmer. And she also worked in factories. And so all of these things allowed her to be a knowledgeable leader, a knowledgeable activist in this arena of work and labor. So her reflections were that we work anyway, whether it's to make a living or for other reasons, and it's important that we connect to those larger reasons. Work, she said, should be seen in its larger context. Or if it isn't, we soon feel like cogs in a machine. A nut or bolt or moving papers about aimlessly, these kinds of things. Today, with all the monitoring devices that we have in place, I'm sure if you're delivering things and every movement is being monitored, you have this feeling. So how do we connect that to a larger context? Her example was two women, each sewing clothes for a baby. One woman is pregnant and while sewing thinks about the child she's carrying. The other woman is a convict engaged in prison labor. She too is careful, but out of fear of being punished, she does the work. Each woman appears to be doing the same work, but a whole gulf of difference lies between one occupation and the other. And I'm sure you've heard variations of this story. I think Haju tells one in which there is a bricklayer and three bricklayers. They go to the first, what are you doing? I'm laying bricks. They go to the second, I'm building a wall. And the third says, I'm building a cathedral. So it's helpful to have this very different context or purpose to our work. So in Buddhism, at the macro level, we're talking about right livelihood. And right livelihood, if you think of the Eightfold Path, so the basic Buddhist teachings are Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path has three segments. So the first segment is Shila or morality, and that includes right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So the second segment of the Eightfold Path is samadhi, and that refers to right concentration, right mindfulness, right effort. And the third is prajna, right view and right understanding, sort of the fruits of those other aspects of the path. So oftentimes we see this Shila component placed first, and right livelihood is a component of that. So in Buddhist terms, what we're talking about when we talk about right livelihood is engaging in activity that is not in conflict with precepts. And the precepts meaning our moral or ethical guidelines. So there are these various lists of types of businesses that are not right livelihood. So a few examples. So one list has 5 types of businesses. So business in weapons, business in human beings, business in meat, business in intoxicants, and business in poisons. So these are pretty broad general categories, but I would push back at that a little bit because I know people who work in bars and they serve people. As they engage in this kind of work, they view it as their Dharma practice to help people along the path of working with intoxicants. So, for example, to carefully monitor the amount that people are drinking and this kind of thing. So I would be hesitant to throw somebody out of this temple just because they have that role as a bartender. We're all helping each other along this path. We have, we don't publish this anymore. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to do so. We have this publication called Spring Wind, which was published by Buddhist Society for Compassion and Wisdom, our temples in Toronto, Ann Arbor, and Chicago, back in the late 90s, 1990s, and early 2000s. And I found this edition, it was totally devoted to this topic of right livelihood. And there's some fascinating articles in here. I want to share one of them with you. And I also have copies out there in case you want to take one home. So this particular article is called Start. And it's by Sancho David O'Donnell. And he is a longtime member of our Chicago temple. So you may resonate with some of these reflections. I worked as a puppeteer, but then came a point when I felt that in the face of the world's suffering, puppet love stories were not enough. I worked as a business consultant, but there came a point when I felt that in the face of the world's suffering, we were making just too much stuff. Over years and years, I pondered the question of right livelihood. Like losing my practice, I lost myself in work. And then, like finding my practice, came again and once again and again, still to the question, why am I doing this work? Who does it serve? I stayed at my job. I talked about leaving. I filled journals with what might have been an epic novel, a novel whose protagonist rambled at Dickinsonian length about unapproachable dreams and infinite frustration. In the face of what seemed to be inaction and procrastination, I generated a sense of movement through anger, anger at myself, anger at the job. But the work was happening. The seeds planted were growing. Practicing change without really knowing it, I questioned and searched and sat and forgot and worried and hoped and read. I left the theater. Then I left my job. Now I'm in school studying urban planning. Leaving theater and then consulting did not solve all my problems, nor did it solve those of the world. As a student, I hear the same questions. Why am I doing this work? Who does it serve? Among these questions now, I am aware that the questions, are a form of right livelihood. Right livelihood is, at least in part, the process of questioning. The choice to leave and change direction was important, real steps, but it was not the beginning of the right path. I was on that path when the questions began. How did I come to this path? Is my journey fundamentally a Buddhist journey, a human one? I wonder. I wonder about the historical Buddha, and the choices he made to leave one life for another. I wonder about how I arrived here. Listen, sitting under a rose apple tree at the age of 9, Siddhartha, the prince, felt happiness like a bell. Walking barefoot in the middle of a dirt road years later, Gautama the ascetic was that bell again. Walking barefoot in the middle of a dirt road years later, Gautama the ascetic was that bell again. I was in Detroit. I was consulting to General Motors on the design of a new SUV. I was at lunch with my clients. They wanted to know what I drove, how I got to work. I told them I ride my bicycle. I'm on the morning train and reading the paper. The world seems vast in its suffering and small in its wisdom. I feel for a solution and finding none, hate myself, hate my job, hate the people on the train. I am the news. Listen, I'm wearing silk. I am perfumed. I am the future king. I'm outside the palace. I'm outside what I know. I'm standing in those streets. I'm surrounded by suffering. I'm naked. I'm foul. I am the Buddha. I remember walking the halls of a 36-story office building and simply breathing life into the space between the bathroom and my desk. Tuesday, I moved through the office like a blur. I leave heavy air and black thoughts behind me. No is my wadu, my koan. Wednesday night, I'm at the temple. The carpet is gray, the statue still. My true wadu returns. I return to my wadu. Thursday, I move through the office, smiling. I leave a kind word and no thoughts behind me. Work is my wadu. Watch. A prince opens the doors to a balcony. He climbs the railing. He looks back into the palace. He senses the sleepers there. He lowers himself and pauses, hanging over a dark garden. He lets go. He falls softly in the grass. The office is dark. The city is touching dusk. It's been 7 years at this job. I'm about to leave. I clean my desk. Is anything left undone? I wipe it clean. I sit. I breathe. I smile. I cry. I turn out the light. I take the elevator to the street. So personally, I find that story very inspiring, and I want to reflect on the questions that Sancho kept asking himself. He said, why am I doing this work? Whom does it serve? These are core right livelihood questions. A few personal reflections on this. So I'm sitting here, today in this role of priest, in this newly appointed role of patrol director, and I say, why am I doing this work? Who does it serve? I ask myself this question quite a bit, and I have throughout my lifetime, and I bet you have a similar story. Every now and then you pause and you ask these questions. I would also ask the question, how am I doing this work? So, and I would harken back to the Buddha's quotation in the Dhammapada that says, your work is to discover your work and to give yourself to it. So as I reflect on this question of, why am I here? Who do I benefit? Depending on the day that I ask the question, I have a different answer. One answer that comes up to me quite often is, I'm here because no one else will do it right now. I'm holding a place. Somebody has to hold that place. And so I do feel that call kind of strongly. Other times it feels a lot more self-serving. how lucky I am to be living in an intentional community, a supportive community at this stage of my life. When, for example, I'm having a health problem, somebody is right there willing to take me to the doctor or the emergency room. So that's also a compelling reason for why do I do this work? I live in this community. Who do I benefit? This is interesting. So, no, it's interesting. Yeah, that's right. No, I mean, part of this is it benefits me. Hopefully it benefits the Sangha in some way.
Yeah.
I think, in particular, it may benefit other teachers right now because we're building our strength so that we're more sustainable in the future. And hopefully of some benefit to people who come here for service or for counseling or things like this. I find myself questioning that because I'm not always in the right place when I am working with people, and my words and actions can be unskillful. And so, am I bringing benefit? No, not always. I have to be honest about that. But I think I'm bringing enough benefit to continue doing it. Yeah. So then I turn to the question of how do I do my work, which is very important. I can, when I'm fully present and engaged in this work of practice, for example, there's a difference in how I ring the bell. So if I am distracted, it might be something like just 3 loud rings that are not so inspiring. If I'm fully present, I'm listening to the bell. Just allowing the bell to tell me when it needs to be rung. We are, as you know, engaged in 49-day practice for Simone, our founder. And so every evening for these 49 days, we do some special chanting. The Great Compassion Dharani 3 times. And we do it both in person and on Zoom. So just a couple nights ago, and Ocham, I hope you don't mind if I call you out a bit, but Ocham was able to be here in person. And we were doing that chanting of Great Compassion Dharani. And it felt very special to all of us, to those on Zoom and to those here in person. And Ocham said that as we were doing the chanting, she was sending me her energy. And I could feel that energy. So it makes a huge difference in how it is that we engage in our work. So when we get to that how, I think there's a lot more for us to explore. And perhaps we will continue to explore that next week because I want to leave some time for conversation today. But the how, last week when we left, I gave everybody a little challenge. I said, see if you can find something on your way out to make this place just a little bit better. In the example I gave, although the toilet paper did not cooperate, was making a point on the end of a toilet paper roll, just something teeny tiny like that. So I am curious if anybody found a practice like that, either as they left the temple last week or in their lives throughout the week. So I'm going to invite comments on 2 things. You can respond to either. So one would be that specific question about Did you find something about the how of work that you engaged in this past week? Or you can respond to the question, in your experience working with this right livelihood, what is it that you resonate with, either in what Sancho said or in what I said? You may have your own direct experiences to share with us, okay? So the two questions again, do you have an example of how you engaged in your work? Or two, do you have comments or an example of your right livelihood experience reflections? Okay, now we get the runners, the microphone runners, our trusty Dharma students.
I'm still sort of organizing my thoughts about this, but there seems to be a growing and pretty powerful movement right now of anti-work. And I really appreciated in the passage what was said about part of right livelihood being questioning what it is you do, not only in your practice, but in your labor under the, capitalist system that we all have to participate in. I think especially, given that Labor Day is, approaching and there is still so much work to be done to make work better. I don't know, I appreciate the reminder to bring my practice into what it is that I have to do in order to get paid and pay my rent. Mm-hmm. I think that that's a really vital thing to bring in, even when it's challenging to feel like you're being, ground in this system. So thank you for that passage. That really resonated a lot with me.
Thank you for that passage. I thought it was really interesting and insightful and really relatable to my life. I graduated college a few years ago and I started one job, didn't like it, and I really thought about what I wanted to do. And then I went to another job, which I thought I would be really happy in, be doing right livelihood. And now, a year later, after this new job, I find myself in the same place, questioning whether it's the right path for me, whether I want to do a different path. And I just thought that passage really mentioned, he fills up notebooks with infinite possibilities, infinite frustrations. It was really interesting how there's always different paths to go on. There's probably a million different work paths you can focus on to end world suffering and the world problems. And I just think it's really interesting to reframe that question and say that questioning the work, why you're doing this work and how you're doing the work, rather than the work itself, is the right path. And maybe there will always be frustrations with the work you do, there will always be different paths you can go on, but just questioning that and trying to readjust and get better every day, maybe that's the right path to go forward. And I just thought that passage resonated with me. I need to think about that a little more.
I've been struggling with a very similar thing with my job, and I work in taxes, and if anyone knows, September 15th is a very big deadline.
And over the past couple of weeks, I've been working until 11, 12 o'clock at night to kind of get to a point where I was like, I can stop working, I can just sit, make sure I'm active because I work remotely, and then just get paid. And I haven't liked it very much. We've been called professional tax evaders more than a couple times, and I put my 2 weeks in. It was spur of the moment, all my assignments were done. I left notes, I left everything ready for any transition. And I was met with a very angry boss who told me that it didn't matter if I was there or not. The company began without me and it'll be fine without me. I was instructed to turn everything in by the end of the day. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to anyone, and it hurt a lot. And then the next day, when I wake up, I didn't even think about it. It didn't bother me at all. And it was a really big realization of, I've been fighting with this for a couple of years now. And I really thought people were going to be upset when I left, or I really thought my boss would think